From 86 to 89, Courtney Brown Sr. took a break from his two different large-scale H conspiracy runs, one in the 70s, one in the 90s, to get involved with the yayo.
Pops never really liked selling coke. He old school like that. In the late 80s, coke was a big thing, though. It was the epidemic was full swing, and it was a lot of money in the coke business. So then that next summer, between my sophomore and junior year, when him and Basil Miller's situation in the Bahamas had really got clicking, he needed somebody to bring the money. Back in them days, you could just fly the money out the country yourself.
Under Pindling and Bannister, the Bahamas have become the Islands, a smuggler's paradise.
Another political leader who allegedly has been involved in the cocaine trade is Bahamian Prime Minister Lynden Pindling. Federal authorities have turned up witnesses who said that Pindling was paid off to provide a safe haven for, among others, Carlos Lehder, identified by federal prosecutors as one of the most powerful cocaine lords in Colombia.
Norman's Key. And it was here that federal authorities say the big-time cocaine business really began in the late 1970s. These pictures, now evidence in the trial, were taken by the smugglers themselves on Norman's Key. And when they weren't flying cocaine runs, there were the teenage girls brought in from Colombia and California. And every night for Carlos Lehder, it was steak, lobster, and cocaine. Somehow, authorities say, this coked-up 34-year-old Colombian hoodlum managed to become America's principal supplier of cocaine from an island in the Bahamas. Much of the testimony here in Jacksonville has implicated not only Lehder, but Bahamian officials he allegedly corrupted, including the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Lynden Pindling.
The Caribbean Connection, a report by NBC's Brian Ross on cocaine and what appears to be a pervasive pattern of corruption among some officials in the Caribbean.
So Courtney Brown Jr. was money laundering, taking money down to Basil Miller's operation. Basil Miller was a guy that Courtney Brown Sr. met in federal prison. Basil Miller had been huge in the early 70s. He was a black guy from the Bahamas that was plugged in with the government. He had been under the protection of the Gambino crime family and the Atlanta USP, just like Courtney Brown Sr. was, because...
And Basil and those guys had the airport in the Bahamas. When I was clearing Bahamian customs, all those people at the airport worked for his man. He was connected to the president of the Bahamas and everybody else in the Bahamas.
Can't stop them coming into airfields in Florida. You expect my little country, me, with 200,000 people, to be able to do what you can't do in this big country? You all gotta be crazy.
Two met with one of the world's biggest cocaine bosses, Carlos Lehder.
I'm talking about Lynden Pindling. I'm talking about my father, and...
This is Everett Bannister, a longtime friend and former business partner of the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Lynden Pindling. And, according to drug smugglers, the man who says he is the Prime Minister's bag man.
Get it away from me!
That will always be my father, and I will always love him. But it's time for the truth.
My perception of all governments is total corruption.
And ironically, the president of the Bahamas, Lynden Pindling, who was accused but never convicted of any corruption, he had a bag man, Gordon Bannister. And Gordon Bannister's son became a addict, stole a bunch of money, fled to Miami, and told the DEA all about his dad and Lynden Pindling's corruption, according to him.
To quote Minister Farrakhan, this is the most corrupt country in the world, so I wouldn't blame a little island in the Bahamas for corruption. Yeah, they don't have the control of the media to distract the people like here we do, to make us believe that our politicians are honest, hardworking people trying to do the best they can for the working class. Down there, they just kind of assume the politician's getting his cut like everybody else, right?
Kind of ironic that you had one father and son tandem, Courtney Brown Jr. and Sr., working with Basil Miller and his family. You had a tale of a different family dynamic where you had the son mess up the money and run off to the feds and tell on his dad.
Today I've come, though, to pay tribute to Sir Lynden, to celebrate his life, to speak about what he meant to and did for the masses, indeed, what he did for the Bahamas.
I started going down to the Bahamas to bring Basil Miller his money. After about the fourth run, on my way from a flight from Miami International to the Bahamas, the DEA pulled me off a plane, take me down to the basement of Miami International Airport. Totally honest, obviously, I'm 22 years old. I'm absolutely terrified. Guy flips his badge out. He's like, DEA, come with us. You got money in your bag? I don't know. I think it's some money in there. Why do you got money in your bag? Because my family's going into the lobster business, and I'm going down to the Bahamas to make a deal and buy some lobsters because my family's getting into the restaurant business, and we need lobsters. So it had been so rehearsed, even though I'm 22 and never had any contact with law enforcement at all. So inside, I am literally dying inside. But the muscle memory of, if this happens, this is what you say. And I just kept sticking to the script. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So eventually the DEA opens up my bag. They go through the money. They stack up the $90,000 because, again, we were rushing, so we hadn't even hid the money very well. You know, as I say, that day we were unlucky and we were sloppy. And that day, being unlucky and sloppy on the same day, and then the custom agent was like, let me help you out, young man. I'm not the DEA, I'm not the FBI. I'm U.S. Customs and you're at an international airport. You will either open up your bag or I'll just take it. They find the $90,000. They each took $3,000, laughed, jokingly said thank you. One told me how he was gonna buy his wife a new dress, and another one took his $3,000 and told me he was gonna go on vacation, and the third one said, make sure you tell your dad we appreciate the gift. It was another one of the chunks that the whole thing is a game and everybody's in on it. That was just like, I mean, I knew enough and knew about dirty cops and all, but to see it and live it, to see the smirk and to see how nonchalant it was, and that we wasn't that important, and that they really didn't give a damn about me or my father, that we was, what my man say in Scarface, there was a bunch of dopers on the block. We wasn't that special. Well, Basil calls my old man and says, your son didn't get off the plane down here.
The Bahamas does not grow drugs. Americans buy it from where it came from. Americans are engaged in transporting it. Americans receive it in the United States. Americans use it in the United States.
So the DEA, of course, they are professionals. What's this 22-year-old kid gonna do as soon as we let him out this room? He's gonna go, this is ancient times, the phone banks, right? All through the airport, there's these banks of payphones. He's gonna go to a payphone. He's gonna call his dad. His dad's gonna give him some instructions. They let me out. I went immediately to the payphone. I called my dad. My dad gave me some instructions, which was, Basil's lawyer needs to talk to you immediately.
And when you say protect you, that means that if you get arrested, what happens to you?
Not in the Bahamas, sir. Not if you pay, you won't get arrested. I mean, they just turn their backs or whatever. For instance, let me tell you, in 1982, by mistake, by an error, 5 of my people got arrested, like I say, completely by mistake. And they all left jail. Nobody was sentenced. They were all acquitted. It did cost me $250,000, though.
It cost you $250,000.
In fact, $272,000 to be exact.
Who'd you pay that to?
Lawyer, Bahamian lawyer.
But do not go back to the hotel you normally stay at. And thank God I didn't, because all 4 taxis that I was gonna first get to were all agents. The fact that this cat and mouse thing that dealers and traffickers and the agents go through, and that none of it is that personal. So they're like, tell your dad we know what he's up to. And I'm like, actually, if that was true, you would be arresting. And Basil had a big law firm down there in Miami because, again, I learned in the game real quick, crash course, right? Their concern in the Bahamas was this you being sloppy and being unlucky, or have we been compromised?
Today in Florida, a federal grand jury indicted 17 people. 4 were arrested, charged with conspiring to import cocaine into the United States with the help of Bahamian officials.
And the lawyer, I'll never forget, the lawyer tells me, he says, well, Mr. Brown, let me help you out. Down here in Miami, 33% of the people at the airport are tourists, 33% are traffickers or money launderers, and other 33% are federal agents. It happens all the time. Then he goes to let me know of the scope of Basil Miller's. He said, you know, when they called me, I assumed I'd be bailing you out from Dade County Prison or Dade County Jail. He says, but 90,000, it wasn't worth their time, which put things in perspective for me. So I wasn't the first money mule from Basil that had interactions with the DEA, and normally the lawyer has to bail them out. Because of that, but Mr. Miller had grown very fond of me. He's a very educated man, and he tells my dad, well, Basil was really big, say 72, 73, 74, out of the Bahamas. So big that his case, Henry Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State, helped him get extradited from Jamaica. When he was making all of his money in the early 70s, the Bahamas hadn't even got its independence. I heard a story from a family member of his. They were going to the jungles of Ecuador getting it. Truly, it's no exaggeration. He was one of the people in the Bahamas who partnered with Carlos Lehder.
Federal prosecutors nailed a big one today in the continuing war on cocaine. They got a guilty verdict in the Florida trial of Carlos Lehder, the most powerful Colombian drug dealer ever brought to trial in this country. NBC's Brian Ross has been on the trail of Lehder for a long time, and tonight he describes the significance of this conviction and the challenges still before U.S. narcotics officials.
The jury of 8 women and 4 men deliberated for 7 days under extraordinarily heavy security after former Miami policemen working for Lehder were spotted following jurors to their homes. Just before noon today, the jury returned its verdict, finding Lehder guilty on all 11 counts of drug smuggling involving more than 3 tons of cocaine smuggled into Florida and Georgia. In his closing argument, the U.S. Attorney, Robert Merkel, holding up one of Lehder's submachine guns and standing next to a cart loaded with cocaine, said Lehder had built his drug empire on a Bahamian island, Norman's Key, using violence and corruption. More than 100 witnesses testified against Lehder, including one of Lehder's most important drug pilots, Andrew Barnes.
We could fly out of Norman's Key with a load of coke back then and be almost 100% guaranteed of flying straight into the U.S., no matter how you did it, without being tailed.
Some of the most damaging evidence against Lehder came from Lehder himself, a flamboyant and erratic personality who admired Adolf Hitler and who talked openly about his drug activities in this 1985 interview in the jungles of Colombia, at a time when Lehder had allied himself with leftist guerrillas.
Cocaine and marijuana has become a revolutionary weapon against American imperialism.
And the jury was shown films that the Colombian drug boss had made at his Bahamian drug base, the remote island of Norman's Key, which Lehder tried to pass off as a jet-set resort.
Old school hustlers, so even though everybody was flipping bricks, was just everybody would, you know, if you had a good ticket and it was good work, they was putting 15, 2,000. But that wasn't Pop style. They was taking the bag and breaking it all the way down. You know, Pop from the old school, if you wanted an 8-ball and you knew him, he'd sell you an 8-ball. If you wanted a brick, if you wanted a key, he'd sell you a key. But he'd rather, the core of the business was him and Frank just splitting the bag, and he knew what was going on all over the country. Everybody else moving 20, 30 at a time, and Pop was like, I don't like that.
So what brought the yayo run to a close was kind of 2 things. Courtney Brown Sr. got caught with a gun in his apartment while he was still on parole, so he had to go do 18 months. But things probably would have still kept going on. But right around that time, and really he was probably lucky he got locked up, because he might have got caught up, a woman that they knew from Detroit who had been a postal worker, that they just knew, hit the lottery and won like, I don't know, $500,000 or something, and decided she wanted to get into the business, and that ended up going sideways and bringing the Detroit Bahamian Basil Miller connection to a close.
No, she's a mail lady. She drop off mail to people's house. But she liked to run around with guys who was in the streets and shit, and thought she was half slick. So she hit the number. She get $500,000. Now she want to be a queenpin. We made a bad mistake because she wanted to spend $250,000 of it up front. She gonna get into the game heavy. She wanna dive into the game. We had one of our people took her down to the island, so she got introduced to Basil, but just as a, hey, this such a friend of the family, yada, yada, yada. They end up exchanging information. They end up doing some things that we, to be honest, were unaware of. But when we know, what he don't know is when she gets popped in DC doing whatever she was doing, we got an ear to the streets of Detroit. Our people telling me, you know, your bra hot. She got popped out in DC. Pop, tell Basil, I don't know what you and old girl doing, but I'm gonna tell you, you need to be careful, because I'm very sure she talking to them people.
And it was Basil's greed as well, because you didn't introduce, say, hey.
You should start serving her. No, that was not it. They cut their own deals. And anyway, that brought the Bahamian thing, because they came down there trying to get him extradited. The Bahamian government wouldn't extradite him.
Oh, they indicted him.
They did try to, yeah, because she told him, she rolled on him. As fate would have it, behind all of this, how much she had told on Pops or not told, or told just enough to, this is exactly 89, because leading to that, the feds end up raiding his apartment over
So
on.
he had about a 3-year cocaine run?
From 86 to 89, yes. And they find a gun and some money at his apartment. He's still on parole. They violate him. They send him to Springfield, Missouri on an 18-month gun charge violation. Obviously, in the whole Bahamas thing for us came to an end.
This has been an extended cut from Beyond Street Dreams, which are finishing up our new documentary dropping spring 2025.